Welcome to another edition of 805 Sports Talk. Alongside me is the one and only Elliott Stern. Now, this is the final week of the regular season of the high school football season, so that can only mean one thing. It's rivalry week, and one of the biggest rivalries in the area is Righetti against Pioneer Valley. Now, I know they're having kind of down seasons this year, but it's still a big game. And correspondent Brian Stanley caught up with the coaches and players from both teams at the yearly luncheon at Coolhan Luke's in Santa Maria on Wednesday.
In a rivalry matchup to conclude the regular season, the Pioneer Valley Panthers football team hosts the Righetti Warriors for the Battle of the Helmet.
So the helmet that we have here with us today will be what we're playing for, so it's the Battle of the Helmet. We started this thing a little before my time, but this is my fourth meeting with Pioneer Valley for this game, and it's always been a very good game.
The Warriors are currently in possession of the helmet after shutting out the Panthers 24-0 last season.
Awesome to have a crosstown rival and to have a meaning. No matter what the records are of the teams, just have a meaning, and it makes the kids work a little bit harder.
Before the big game this Friday, players, coaches, and administration sat down for lunch at Coolhan Luke's in Santa Maria.
To have that fellowship, some of these kids played with each other as youth or against each other, and it's nice to have them see as young adults and young men, see how they progress in their talents and in school, and they catch up with the events in their lives and the current events. It's great to have fellowship.
Panther senior Andrew Leando enjoyed the luncheon with the Righetti Warriors, but sees Friday's contest as something different.
It's a lot of fun, Right now, it's all just fun and games, but when we get to the field, it's a whole different story. They're on the opposite team. We're trying to beat them.
Righetti senior Joey Garcia sees the luncheon as an opportunity to get to know your opponent.
I think it's a big factor in the whole rivalry game type of situation. It's just getting to know who you're playing against and just having a friendly little rival.
Stepping in as the leader of Warriors offense mid-season, quarterback John Laron wants to keep the helmet in Righetti's hands for another year.
The helmet is more of a sentimental value and bragging rights for us, for both teams. If we keep the helmet, it means anything because it's going to be our last game, and if we win that helmet back, that means we go out with our pride.
For Righetti head coach Ed Herman, there are many upsides to the rivalry between Pioneer Valley and Righetti.
And a lot of these guys have played together through youth league. They know each other pretty well, so it makes for a good game that way. The competition's usually really good. The fans, it's a great night for football. The travel is cheap. We don't have to go very far. And, of course, we're playing for something.
Righetti has won 6 of the last 10 contests between the two schools, and with both teams out of playoff contention, the battle for the helmet leaves something to be played for.
Unfortunately, the records came out the way they did this year, ups and downs by both teams, but it's always nice to have something to fight for or play for at the end. We're playing for the helmet, and every school, our school wants to have the helmet, their school wants to have the helmet, so it gives a big meaning to the game itself for the kids, and always has a purpose.
Pioneer Valley and Righetti are meeting for the 11th time to battle for this helmet at Pioneer Valley's Panther Stadium this Friday. Reporting in Santa Maria for 805 Sports Talk, I'm Brian Stanley.
I was at the luncheon too. Both teams are geared up, really keyed up for this game Friday night, and it's like a championship to them. It's their playoff game. And speaking of playoffs and someplace else I have been, I was in Las Vegas over the weekend for the NHRA's 16th annual Toyota Nationals. It's the next to last race in their chase for the championship, and we still have 2 local connections involved in it. Alan Johnson, who's a consultant to 2 of the top fuel dragsters, and Ron Capps, who is from San Luis Obispo and is leading the funny car races. Now first, before we get to Ron Capps, I'd like to say that Alan Johnson's team, one of them, he works with Steve Torrance and his Capco Contractors team, and Brittany Force and her John Force Racing team. And Torrance actually won the event on Sunday. And he was thrilled for the race win, and his good friend Antron Brown won the season championship when Torrance knocked out Doug Kalita in the quarterfinals. That meant that Brown had an insurmountable lead in the points race. Now, heading into the season finale in Pomona in 2 weeks, Ron Capps has an 86-point lead on the field with 1 race remaining and 120 points up for grabs. So he hasn't won anything yet, but after 4 second-place finishes on the season. He's looking for a breakthrough year where he wins his first ever championship, and he lost in the quarterfinals this weekend, but if he can make it through the quarterfinals in Pomona in 2 weeks, then he will wrap up the championship, even if he doesn't win Pomona. Now, I was talking to him while we were in Las Vegas, and he's really excited about how his season is going. I caught up to him in the pits before the finals, and we talked about his chances for winning that first season title.
So how much fun is this?
It's fun. Here we are. We got basically Pomona is the only race after this race. We have a lead, but it's not. Some people think it's a big lead. I don't. I've been there before. We fought for a championship where we've come up short 5 times, and by very, very little points. So I know what it's like to have the heartbreak and not win it. But we're in a great position right now. I've had the season of a dream season. I mean, we won 5 races this year, set track records left and right. Just done so well, and I'd hate to not end such a great season without winning a championship. So it is fun. It really is.
Now, the guys that are chasing you, they're your teammates. The closest guys to you are all guys you work with every day.
Tell me about it. Yeah, it's that's the hard part. We're teammates, we're friends, and yet I'm fighting for something that I've fought my whole life for. And you wish your teammates well most of the time, except on Sunday mornings here at the end of the season. I wish they would go for a boat ride down in Mexico and not come around for the whole weekend, but I know that you're not going to win a championship out here. I know from our friend Alan Johnson and Blaine and hanging out with him when I was younger and watching Alan win championships in Top Fuel. You're never going to win one because people lay over and don't show up. It's going to be a fight right to the end. It always is. It's a great sport because it comes down to the wire. The racing is as close as you get anywhere in any type of racing. So I just got to prepare myself to fight till the end and enjoy it. I'm trying to enjoy it at the same time, and that's a tough thing to do, to enjoy something at the same time, stay focused, and have the.
So Caps is in the lead as we head to Pomona in 2 weeks for the Auto Club Finals. John Force actually won the funny car event, the 146th race win in his long and illustrious career. And it was fun, and it'll be fun, and I'll be down there in 2 weeks when they race this, and we know that one of Alan Johnson's guys, Steve Torrance, is probably going to finish second in Top Fuel, but everybody around here is hoping for Ron Capps to win his first ever National Hot Rod Association title. So that playoff is about to end. Just one more race and the season is over. Around here, we've got all kinds of playoffs, and they're just getting underway. So we've got golf is going on, but the team golfers, Cabrillo fell this week in the Northern Regionals, and volleyball is underway. And Joe, you were at a match just the other night.
Yes, the CIF Southern Section girls volleyball playoffs started Tuesday night, and I was on hand to see one of several area teams move on to the second round. Arroyo Grande cruised past Peninsula 3-0. The Eagles won a hard-fought first set, 25-23. Then they beat the Panthers 25-17 and 25-18 to close out the match with a 3-0 win. Sabina Selzer led the Eagles with 10 kills. Aaron Dabe and Bryn Toming were both solid on offense for Arroyo Grande. Macy Latchman has been tremendous all season as the team setter, and she was impressive last night with 34 assists for the team. Juju Fuller, she's a senior. She's not one of the tallest or strongest players, but she's just a great libero, probably one of the top liberos that you'll find in the area. She was tremendous on defense throughout that match, and we haven't given volleyball a ton of coverage on this show so far this season, but our area has some tremendously talented players, and Arroyo Grande definitely fits that bill, though the Eagles will face one of the better teams in the state Thursday night in the second round. Arroyo Grande plays at top seed Ventura Thursday night. But there are a number of other area teams moving on into the second round. In other action, Nipomo beat Nogales on the road 3-0. Templeton beat Maranatha 3-1. Mission Prep cruised past Burbank 3-0. Santa Ynez is also in the second round, but they have yet to play. They had a first-round bye. They're the second seed in Division 6. Talking about Nipomo, they finished third in the LPL, but Nipomo coach Andrea Reagan has done a tremendous job with that group. This is the second year in a row that the Titans have advanced to the second round of the playoffs. So we have Templeton, Nipomo, and Santa Ynez in the second round. So that's 3 teams from the LPL, the Los Padres League, in the second round. So shows you how solid that league is, and Santa Ynez is always atop that league. And if you want to see some good volleyball action tomorrow night, Santa Ynez hosts a second round match. They play La Sierra at 6 p.m. Thursday night. So if you're in the Santa Ynez Valley and you want to see some volleyball action, definitely check out Santa Ynez. They've been great all year, and they got a chance to make a run in these Division 6 playoffs with those competitive equity playoff divisions. They're in a good division, and they're the second seed there. So Santa Ynez could definitely make a run, and they start their playoff action Thursday night at 6 p.m. at home against La Sierra. Moving from volleyball back to football, we've got a huge week. Obviously, it's the last week of the regular season, so there's going to be some huge games this week. And it really starts with Nipomo at Santa Maria. That's going to be the game we're webcasting this week, and there's a lot on the line for both those teams. Nipomo's pretty close to clinching a playoff spot. They're probably going to be into the playoffs no matter what. Santa Maria is just as close. They're right there. A good showing Friday night against Nipomo will put those Saints into the playoffs. They may need a win. They're ranked about 12th in Division 12, so they're real close to clinching a playoff spot. But a win for Santa Maria against Nipomo will actually do much more for the Saints. That will clinch a co-league championship. So that if they beat Nipomo Friday night, that will split the league championship between those 2 teams. Now, it could have been a 3-way championship with Mission Prep, but Mission Prep lost to Templeton last week in just a stunning defeat. Mission Prep beat Santa Maria earlier in the season. They were kind of close with Nipomo for a little bit, but then they fall to Templeton. So the league championship game is Friday night at Santa Maria. Nipomo versus Santa Maria, it will decide the league championship. Nipomo can finish undefeated in league with the win, but if the Saints win, each team will have 1 loss, and Santa Maria will have the win, so that will give a co-league championship. And I don't know how long it's been since Santa Maria's had a league championship, but that would be really great. Elliott, I just want to get your thoughts on that matchup.
Well, you went to Santa Maria. If you can't remember, I've been here. This is my 16th football season, and I can't remember how long it's been since they've won one either. So it's been a long time. And Dan Ellington has said before the season that they were going to fight for the championship, and here he is. He's right. If they win, they're 6-4. Now, only Dan Ellington and his kids really believed before the season. We wanted to believe. We liked the idea that they were going to be there, but they could be 6-4 and co-champs and in the playoffs. They could even be in the playoffs with a loss, but it's not guaranteed. But they would be 5-5, and that is by far the best season they've had since Jim Doyle was coaching way back in the early 2000s. And he's over at Pioneer Valley. He's not coaching even anymore. But I like Santa Maria's chances at home. But Nipomo, Tony Dodge, they had some rough goings early in their season. But Tony Dodge figured out what kind of talent he had. And he's really good at adjusting to his team's talent. Sometimes they go hurry up, which is what he likes on offense. But if they can't do that, then he adjusts. He finds the kid's strengths, and they play to those strengths, and since he started doing that, they've been on a roll. So this is a toss-up. These are one of those coin flip games. They both have a lot on the line, which is what you want to see in the final game of the season. You want to see the regular season. You want to see there's something to play for, and they're playing for league championships and not only the playoffs, but better playoff seeding. So they're going to have it all on the line, and I kind of like Dan Ellington coming through with his word, with his promise that they were going to be a much better team this year. They are, and I'm thinking it's going to be close, but Santa Maria can pull this one out.
Yeah, I would definitely think that Nipomo would be the favorites in that matchup. Santa Maria really has to come out, not let the emotions get too high. They're going to be playing at home. I would expect that the home crowd to be pretty pumped up for that game. So they got to keep the emotions in check, do what they want to do out there on the field, but not get too high, not get too low if something goes wrong early on. One thing is for sure there's going to be a lot of talented players, a lot of really solid athletes on the field for both teams. Nipomo has Michael Jordan and Isaac Bosley. Those two have kind of turned into a two-headed monster running the ball. Michael Jordan, he was out with those concussion-like symptoms earlier in the season, but he's back, and he looked great last week against Morro Bay. The Titans put up a running clock against those Pirates. So it's going to be tough for Santa Maria, but I think if they play the game, they're going to have to play mistake-free. Just stick to the guns. They're gonna be in that game, I think, late there if they play up to their potential. So it's gonna be real interesting to see if the Saints can do that. Nipomo, though, has a lot of talent. Michael Jordan's been great. J.J. Ramirez and that quarterback Nicholas Robledo, he's a junior, but he's had a full season now to basically get it acclimated to varsity football, and he's been pretty solid. So it's gonna be tough for the Saints, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game. I would probably pick Nipomo there. But if the Saints can give them a good fight, that's great, for their playoff chances and all that. They're going to most likely finish second there in the Northern League. So, they're right there in it, and I would expect a good game against Nipomo Friday night. Now, switching over to the LPL, there's another big game. This one's going to decide second place. St. Joseph plays at San Ynez. Now, I've seen both those teams lose to Lompoc the last 2 weeks. St. Joseph lost at home to Lompoc last Friday night, 27-3. It was about what you would expect in that matchup. Lompoc was pretty dominant early on. They got that opening kickoff return with Shamar Savage. They looked really good defensively, just allowed 3 points to a real high-flying St. Joseph team. It wasn't as dominant early on, I guess. It was 7-0, I think, after the first. It was pretty tight at halftime, but Lompoc just started out the second half really strong, just put that game away. But that's just a huge game. Both those teams want to finish second place in the LPL, and that's what's going on with that game. You win that game, you get second behind Lompoc in the LPL. So I think both those teams are really going to go after it. San Ynez really wants to finish second. They want a playoff spot after what happened last year. They haven't got 9 wins since, I think, the year 2000, something like that. So if they win Friday night, beat St. Joseph at home, they'll finish up 9-1 on the season. That's a great year. I think it could be a pretty good matchup. St. Joseph has looked great. They're probably the favorites, but San Ynez playing at home with so much on the line, I think that's going to be a good game.
You've got two good quarterbacks, Michael McCoy at San Ynez and Dino Maldonado at St. Joseph, but I kind of give the edge on that one to McCoy at San Ynez, and he's got Gabe Prendergast as a wide receiver, and I think that they're a little stronger combination, but St. Joe's got C.J. Cole, who could be a candidate for Player of the Year. He's everything on offense and defense, running back, wide receiver, defensive back, kick returner. He just never comes off the field. And he's fast. He's a Pac-8 league track champion. And so, he can get behind the defense if Maldonado can find him. San Ynez came up short last year at the end of the season, but they were at St. Joe. They'd like to get a little revenge on their own home turf. I think San Ynez might have the edge on this one, but St. Joe showed that played Lompoc's a little tougher, I think. So if you use Lompoc as the common denominator, St. Joe might have the edge. But if you look at the offense that San Ynez can put up, the points that they can put up, you'd think, well, this McCoy to Prendergast could be just unstoppable because they're just such a good tandem. I kind of give the edge to San Ynez, but they had a collapse last year, lost their last 3 games. I don't think they want to do that again this year. They really want to go out with a bang, make a statement before the playoffs. And there is, like you say, a lot on the line. Bragging rights, who's second place? Lompoc's a beast. There's just no stopping them. The best team in the area, other than Lompoc, is Arroyo Grande, and they couldn't stop them. They had the closest score. They scored 2 touchdowns, and nobody's done that. They only gave up 1 other touchdown all year. But this is not Lompoc. This is San Ynez and St. Joe, and I kind of like San Ynez at home in this matchup.
Yeah, I think it could turn into a good game. I just don't think San Ynez has enough speed on defense to keep up with St. Joseph. They have so many playmakers. C.J. Cole The funny thing about CJ Cole last week, I actually saw him get caught from behind. I think Lompoc's Anthony Manahan brought him down from behind as Cole ran off like a 65-yard run, got tackled right inside the 10. I've never seen CJ Cole get caught from behind, so that was a little surprising to see. It was a long run, and he had to kind of weave his way a little bit, but he was caught from behind. I had never seen that. So I don't think anyone on Sandy Inez's roster can catch CJ Cole from behind. So he has a lot of speed, and then all those 4 wide receivers are really solid. Mason Beasley was ejected last week, so he's going to be out for that game. But St. Joseph still has so many talented players with that quarterback Dino Maldonado, and then the receivers Justin Wong and Nate Guzman, and that's just too much talent. I think Trevor Cole, CJ's little brother, has looked really good as well. So I think St. Joseph just has a little too much speed, a little too much talent for Sandy Inez, but the Pirates have looked good. They might surprise me, but I would probably go with St. Joseph in that game. Even on the road, I think they're gonna finish strong. And Sandy Inez, my guess would finish 8-2. 8-2 is an improvement over 7-3 what they did last year, but I would go with St. Joseph in that game. It's a huge LPL game, though.
One of the things about working on a community newspaper like this, you not only get to know the players and the coaches, you get to know the families. And Mason Beasley's grandmother, Yvonne Beasley, was not happy that he got himself kicked out of that game. And because of that, he's going to sit, and that's a big part of the St. Joseph defense. So, but you are right. With C.J. Cole, he could win a game pretty much all by himself. So, it's tough. That's one of the interesting, great things about this weekend is there are so many games that are going to be close. Your Nipomo, Santa Maria, St. Joe, San Ynez, even Righetti and Pioneer Valley.
Yeah. Righetti, Pioneer Valley, I have no idea how that game's going to turn out. PV started out 2-0. We got kind of the hype train going a little bit with those guys, and then it's kind of fallen apart a little bit since that Santa Maria win. Righetti's been kind of down throughout the season. We weren't sure what to expect out of those guys before the year, but they just got their one win. They did beat Slow. There's pretty much what you're playing for Friday night in that game is just pride and some bragging rights. And I think you kind of summed it up perfectly, is that it is just, kind of like their playoff game. That's what they got to play for. Not too many postseason chances between those two teams, but I think there's a lot to play for. There's some really good football players on each side. So, I've seen both of them play quite a bit this year. I don't know who I would go with. I think maybe Pioneer Valley is who I would pick, just pretty much almost as a coin toss. I've seen PV look really good at parts. They beat Nipomo to start the season, and Nipomo's turned into a pretty solid team. So Pioneer Valley has shown flashes, and they beat Santa Maria at Santa Maria 13-10, but they just haven't been consistent enough, and they've had a pretty tough schedule. So I think I would go with PV in that one. They do have, more wins than Righetti, but, who knows? Righetti's played a little bit better lately. They did put up 27 points against Paso Robles, and using John Lerone at quarterback a little bit. Justin Frazier's been good on defense. He had a pick 6 last week. He's looked solid. So, that's pretty much as close as you can get to a toss-up in high school football, I think, that game.
Lerone is going to be back at quarterback, and he told me earlier today, actually, that he wants to go out with the win. He wants the seniors to leave on a winning note. And remember, they're battling for the helmet. All right, this is the battle for the helmet. So it's more than just winning the game. There's the city or crosstown rivalry at stake. These kids have known each other for a long time. They played youth football against each other, freshman football, JV football. So it's not as though they've just started this. It's the 11th battle for the helmet, because remember, Pioneer Valley's a fairly young school, but it's the 11th time they've met with this battle for the helmet. Righetti has a 6-4 lead. They want to go home to Righetti with a 7-4 lead and bring the helmet back. And the helmet is half Righetti and half Pioneer Valley, and the winner gets the year they won it stamped on that helmet. Righetti wants to put another stamp. Then Pioneer Valley, they want to leave a legacy. That's what the kids were saying today, and the only serious injury they've got is to their coach. John Ruiz is wearing a brace because he got knocked over a couple weeks ago, and he got hit in the Santa Maria game. He said to me he didn't know which player it was, but he got taken out on the sideline, and now he's torn some cartilages in his knee, so he's hobbling around with a brace and crutches, but they all are talking about leaving a legacy for the next group of kids for next year, going out on a winning note, showing that even under the adversity of an up and down, more down than up season, they can still hold their heads high. Both sides are pledging good sportsmanship, and they're looking forward to the game. I'm thinking, though, that I saw both of them actually play against SLO, and Pioneer Valley just womped up on SLO, so I'm thinking that Pioneer Valley has a little bit more in the tank coming into the season finale. But that's one of the things they said. This is our playoff game. They know they're not going to the CIF playoffs. They're not favored. They don't have enough wins to compete in any division. So this is it. This is the Super Bowl for Pioneer Valley and Righetti, and they both want that helmet. I'm thinking Pioneer Valley is going to take it home, and it'll be a 6-5 lead for Righetti in the series, but the helmet will move over to Pioneer Valley.
Yeah. Now, I think the two biggest rivalry games in the area is probably St. Joe versus Righetti and then Lompoc versus Cabrillo, and that's what we got. Friday night is a big game at Houck Stadium, Lompoc versus Cabrillo. Lompoc's a designated home team. You know, when those two teams are good, that whole city comes out. Like literally, the whole city is there to watch that game. Even when they're both kind of mediocre, you'll see a full house there. And this game's actually pretty interesting. I know Lompoc's been dominant, but Cabrillo's actually hung in there. They've hung tough with the tough season. We talked about it, you know, the last month, how much turmoil they've gone through. J.J. Willis has done a good job keeping them afloat. So I think this game's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a great crowd there. You know, maybe Cabrillo can keep it close for a little bit, but, you know, Lompoc's going to pull away eventually. It might start early. From seeing the teams play Lompoc the last couple weeks, I've seen teams kind of press and get out of what they do when they play Lompoc. We saw last week St. Joseph went to these kind of like option plays and then have a lateral out of that option, and they turned it over a couple times, and St. Joseph even hit a long pass to linebacker Fenton Will, who also plays tight end. That's something they normally don't do, and Fenton ended up fumbling the ball away in the second half. So St. Joseph did a couple things they usually don't do, and it cost them. Even that short kickoff to start the game, Shamar Savage fielded it right around the 23 and took it 77 yards for a touchdown. So when you play Lompoc, I think you got to do is stay within yourself and just play your game and hope for the best. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to press and switch it up, because that's going to cost you. You got to prepare and do what you do. And if Cabrillo can do that, they might be able to keep it close for a half, but I don't think it's going to be much better than that. But I think it's, you know, the game is more interesting than you would think at first glance with the way Cabrillo has hung in throughout the season.
Well, it's like we have up here in Santa Maria, the city rivalry games, Santa Maria, Pioneer Valley, Righetti, St. Joe, any of them playing against each other. We've got the four schools playing 11-man football. They've got the two, and that makes it a bigger rivalry because it's not the, you know, a St. Joe versus Pioneer Valley and then St. Joe versus Righetti the next week. So there's always a rival in your ahead of you. This is it. This is, you know, San Ynez is sort of a rival for both teams, but they're not in their valley. And this is big, but I just don't see, you know, Lompoc hasn't given up a touchdown since the second week of the season. They've given up some field goals, and Cabrillo would be lucky, I think, to get a field goal. I don't think this is going to be close at all until, well, once the first kickoff is kicked, I don't think it's going to be close. But this is a big bragging rights game for these guys, and I know Cabrillo's going to bring it. They, you know, they were down, they were up. Then, you know, they lost two, they won two, then they had a coaching change, and they went through some turmoil, and they got themselves back on track. They beat Santa Maria, and were in a game that Santa Maria could have won. I think that proved a lot to these kids, so they're not going to quit. I just don't think they have the talent, but it's going to be fun. And I've been to a bunch of these games. It's amazing. The Houck Stadium is right on a street on one end, but the stands on both sides are going to be filled. The people will be on the south end of the field will be like 20, 30 deep, just standing room only. They'll be standing everywhere, and then there'll be people with campers, RVs lined up on the street. They'll park early so they can get those seats and the roofs of those will be filled, sort of like a Cubs game, only with RVs instead of apartment houses outside of Wrigley Field. So it's going to be a huge attendance, and everybody comes out for this one, even people that aren't from there, just because of the experience. We have some great rivalry games but in Santa Maria, but we never see this kind of attendance, and this place is going to be packed. The joint's going to be jumping, as they say, and I know Cabrillo's going to bring it, but I don't see how they can get past this monster. I don't see Lompoc losing, if at all. They're now the number 2 team in their division. I don't see them losing until the semifinals of the playoffs, and they may make it to the finals where they'll finally, those 2 weeks, though, will be the first real challenges they face. If they don't get ahead of themselves and they play their game, I see they're going deep, them and Arroyo Grande, the deepest into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think when I started here, it was also Andrew Jones' first season as a head coach at Lompoc. And, they've been great since day one with him as head coach, but I think we got to start talking about if this is the best and most complete team that Andrew Jones has had there at Lompoc. I wasn't too sure early on in the season with the new quarterback coming in. Torrey Sims was great his 2 years leading that team. They lost Chris Green as well. They lost some really, really solid pieces from the last couple of years. And I wasn't sure how good this Lompoc team was going to be, but they've just been, incredible. I think it's 30 points now they've allowed all season. It's over 60 days since they've allowed a touchdown. It was September 2nd, the second week of the season, against Nipomo. J.J. Ramirez scored, and they haven't allowed a touchdown since. I saw San Ynez do it, and I think St. Joseph did it last week. They're down, but they just kick a field goal just so they don't want to get shut out. So, we've seen that the last couple weeks. I would assume Cabrillo might get shut out, just looking at it on paper. But Cabrillo, they really surprised me with that win over Pioneer Valley a couple weeks ago, 39-17, I think it was. They've looked solid. They were with San Ynez for a little bit, weren't really in the game against St. Joseph, but they've surprised me a little bit, so I think maybe they can score. I would kind of be surprised if they get a touchdown. I know this is a big game for Cody Perry at Cabrillo. He's a transfer guy from Lompoc. He's had a solid senior season, so he's probably going to be really hyped up for that game. He's a real good running back at Cabrillo, so I know this is a huge game for Cody Perry. He might try to do a little too much. We'll see. I know the Lompoc guys will probably be keen on him a little bit just because he's such a focal point of that Cabrillo offense, but it's been interesting watching Cabrillo run that double wing set, and switch quarterbacks a little bit, but, there's just really no match for what Lompoc does. So, and it's just real interesting to kind of talk about maybe this is the best Lompoc team that Andrew Jones has had, even though he won 2 championships his first 2 years. So we'll see if the Braves can do it again this year. It's going to be real fun watching that playoff chase throughout the next couple weeks here.
It's different playoffs because of the revamped playoff system, but this could be a better team than the 2 CIF champions that he had. We'll find out. If they win in their division, I'd have to say it's his best team ever. Yeah. But it could be his best team ever even without that title. They've had good teams, but Arroyo Grande got 2 touchdowns, Nipomo got 1. In 9 games, that's it. They had like 5 shutouts in a row. Nobody around here can score on them, so teams, like you said, settle for a couple field goals just so there wouldn't be a big 0 at the end of the game. So I don't know that Cabrillo's going to be able to score on them, and I think the better question is this Andrew Jones' best team? And so far, I'm thinking with all the great teams he's had, this is really the best. Yeah. I mean, look at, he had Anu Tower. He's had all kinds of talented kids over the years, and these guys are stepping it up a level. So
yeah. And we do have one more rivalry game to talk about, going back to the Pac-5 League, and one kind of rivalry that's died down a little bit, doesn't get a lot of attention, is AG versus SLO, but that used to be a big rivalry game until AG kind of took their game up a couple notches, and they've just ran through that rivalry where it's not really that competitive anymore. With the season SLO has had, I wouldn't expect a very good game there, but both those teams really enjoy playing against each other. SLO probably not as much, but both those teams really get up for that game, and it deserves a little attention. I expect Arroyo Grande to roll. That'll be their 9th straight win since losing to Lompoc to start the season. SLO's been really down, and I don't think they're going to get a win this year, obviously with playing AG. But that's a fun little rivalry game out there in SLO County, and I know the Eagles get up for that game. I'm sure the Tigers will be ready to go as well, playing the Eagles in that SLO County showdown over there.
Well, before Nipomo came along, this was the game for the South County with these two teams, and then Nipomo came along. They're not in the same league, but they're sort of Arroyo Grande's neighborhood foe. But it's always a non-league matchup. This is still two teams in the same league. Now it's the Pac-5, but they've been, whatever league it's been, the Pac-8, the Pac-7, they've always been rivals, county rivals, the nearest rivals, and I know SLO is going to be up for it. And they can put up some points, just not enough, because Arroyo Grande's just got too much talent. And if Arroyo Grande didn't open its seasons with Lompoc, they found another opponent, Arroyo Grande'd be going for 10-0. But Tom Goosen likes to start with Lompoc, a non-league game, to get the kids. It's sort of like getting their attention. This is what you got to do to be great. Even if we lose to Lompoc, it's a win because now the kids know what you got to do to be great. Well, they learned that lesson, haven't lost since, and they're not going to lose until somewhere deep into the playoffs. But it'll be a fun game. SLO is got some talent, and they can score some points, and they don't quit. When I saw SLO against Pioneer Valley, and they scored 2 touchdowns in the last minute and a half or so of the game, just because, well, they're down a lot of points. They didn't quit. They threw pass after pass after pass, scored, did it again, scored again, and then it was all of a sudden 35-28 with no time left on the clock to speak of, 15 seconds, so they were going to lose, but they didn't quit, and that's what I expect to see again against Arroyo Grande.
Yeah, the other two SLO County rivalry games is Templeton-Morro Bay, and then in the Pac-5, Paso Robles versus Atascadero. Now, Paso Robles has kind of had an interesting run of late. I don't want to get too much into it. It opened that can of worms, but I don't know if Paso Robles is going to be able to focus on the game too much with what came out with Coach Rich Simke earlier this week, and I don't expect him to be coaching that team in that game. Maybe they'll bring him back, but Coach Simke missed last week's game against Righetti for a video surfaced of him acting kind of strangely in the locker room after the win over SLO. I think it was on October 14th is when the event occurred, and according to multiple media reports, there might be something coming out of that. That'll be interesting, but I don't know if Paso will be able to kind of focus on the game too much. Their defensive coordinator coached them last week against Righetti. Righetti scored 27 points in that game, and now they got to play Atascadero, who's played really well, and I don't think Shimke will be there for that game as well. But that's just a whole nother story, probably for a different day. But Paso Robles really got to try to focus on closing the season strong, and it comes at a tough time. They have to play Atascadero. They're a huge rivalry. As much as the Lompoc Cabrillo game is huge here, that's a huge game up north over there. That Atascadero Paso game.
Paso has been consistently the second best team behind Arroyo Grande up there in the Pac-5 league, and Atascadero third. But now with this turmoil, Paso played Righetti last week. They're not quite the same as Atascadero. Atascadero could sneak this one out. So can the rest of the coaching staff get the kids to focus on the game in front of them and not the situation that's behind them? Or can Atascadero use this to say, this is our shot. We always like to beat these guys. We can get them. It depends on the mood in the locker room, I think, is really going to be the key to that game. But Atascadero could win this.
Yeah, that's going to be a close one, I think. And we also do have a playoff game Friday night. Orchid Academy did advance to the Division I 8-man football playoffs, and they're on the road at Chadwick to start their playoff run. So best of luck to Coach Doug May and all his Spartans Friday night starting the playoffs.
Interestingly, Orchid Academy opened the season playing the same Chadwick team, and that was the week where Orchid Academy likes to play on the big 100-yard football fields, even though they play an 80-yard game with 8-man. So they play on the public school fields here in Santa Maria, which is Santa Maria, Pioneer Valley, and Righetti, but not St. Joseph. And on the opening week, week 0, Santa Maria, Pioneer Valley, and Righetti all had home games, but another public school, San Ynez, did not. So Orchid Academy
has played Chadwick and beat them. I think it was 62-28 or 62-38 on week 0. So now they meet again, but this time it's at Chadwick. But I know from what Doug Mays told me a couple days ago that they think they can beat them again. So they're looking to go out with their seniors to win this game. They still have one of their wide receivers, Mitchell Carpenter, as the quarterback, and they're hoping to get their quarterback back. But if not, they'll give it a go with their backup and see if they can beat Chadwick for the second time this season.
That's all we got for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to tune in Friday night. We'll be at Santa Maria High School. These Saints host the Titans. Pregame show at 6:45, kickoff at 7 p.m. Be sure to tune in to santamariatimes.com. And Friday night, we'll be updating on Twitter and Facebook throughout the night. So be sure to follow me on Twitter and follow our Facebook page as well.
And we'll be at most of these games this weekend, so be sure to join us online, in print, at the Santa Maria Times and next week's Lompoc Record. So we'll have all that for you. We'll be updating things, as Joe said, online Friday night. Read our stories online and in Saturday morning, Santa Maria Times. But that's all the time we have for this week, so thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next week right here on 805 Sports Talk.